first of all, me and Coach Walls are unbelievably excited to get to do this for everybody. Obviously, as you coaches know, we've done some live summits before and have had, you know, 10, 20 different coaches on our summits all throughout the week. And it was really good for us. It worked out really well. It helped you guys out a bunch. Well, with everyone staying home and the stay-at-home orders and everything going on, there's been obviously a huge uptick in these webinar sessions that we had kind of started doing, you know, a couple of years ago. But now everyone has that more time to put out their own stuff, and there's a ton of it, and it's unbelievable. We've been a part of some. We've watched, you know, hundreds of them, but we didn't want to just add on, right? Another thing of scheme, another way to run power, another way to run inside zone, or you know, another feed the cats, you know, add on top of that, because you guys are getting a lot of that stuff, almost inundated with it, and it's great stuff. But as we've talked and had the podcast and talked about it, you know, getting into the season as late as we're going to get into it compared to, you know, the times of the past, it's going to be, we think, imperative that we have strong leadership in our program, that we're able to obviously, you know, fight some of the adversity or attack it, as Cap says, that is no doubt going to be coming from this situation that's going on right now. And then also, you know, we've been diving into learning how to coach or learning how to be a teacher. And so that's kind of what we've dove into, not necessarily scheme, because we don't even know how much scheme we're going to get to add with such little time. It's going to be about, hey, how can we get our kids ready to play football games in a short amount of time? How can we get our team prepared in a short amount of time and have leadership, when normally we talk about leadership being, you know, proven in the off season or in the weight room? Well, now we didn't have a weight room off season for several months. Kids have been away from each other. So we were excited. We kind of mutually, we reached out and we got a hold of Cap in the program. They've been on our podcast before. If you guys have listened to it, it's on YouTube as well, or on all of our podcasts. But we reached back out to them because we knew that they could help us with this. Luckily for us, we're really close friends with Coach Bartell, and he's on the chat right now. We've already kind of shouted him out a little bit, but we're really close friends with Coach Bartell. He's the one that kind of put us in touch with the program for the first time. Coach Bartell, you know, obviously someone that we sharpen our, you know, sword on is Coach Bartell. He can't say enough good things about him. You know, he finds a way to make sure he gets the program out to his campus every year, and is in talks with them all the time. He says that, you know, he just told us today the speech that he gets, you know, the very first speech he got from Corey, which is who works for him in Eastlake, which is in Washington, Eastlake High. He said is unbelievable. He said it's worth it all just for that. And so we know him from Coach Bartell. I played for Coach Sumlin at Houston, who's now at Arizona, who the program works with, at A&M, Mikado Henson, that the program's worked with, and you know, plenty of other Division I football teams, not only football, but other sports. But you guys are football coaches, the most of you watching this. So that's what's, you know, we want to make sure and tell you guys they're doing some unbelievable things. Again, Coach Sumlin, Coach Henson, man, they can't say enough good things about these guys. And then obviously Coach Bartell, the three people we know that know the program, have said nothing but unbelievable things. So we reached out to him, and luckily we got Cap to come on, bring his team from the program, and talk to you guys and us about leadership, about attacking adversity. And they were willing to do this thing, man, for free, you know, just to better our community. And so we can't say thank you to them enough, obviously. But give you a little rundown first about Cap. Eric Kapitulik was born and raised in Thompson, Connecticut, and attended the United States Naval Academy. While there, he was a 4-year varsity letter winner and played on 3 NCAA lacrosse tournament teams. Graduated in 1995 and went on to serve as both a Marine Infantry officer and Special Operations Officer with 1st Force Reconnaissance Company, 1st Marine Division. Eric left active duty after 8 years of service, graduated from the University of Chicago Graduate School of Business in 2005. He's also an ultra-endurance athlete and an avid high-altitude mountaineer. Eric is now, as I've said, the founder and CEO of the program, a team-building and leadership development company, works with corporate teams and leading collegiate and professional athletic organizations around the United States. I'm going to throw it over to him soon, but before I do that, I want to first, before he speaks, we're going to show you guys a brief video about one of Eric's experiences that he talks about while serving in special operations.
The Ironman now stretches on for miles, and you could stand on the shoulder of the road and watch all the stories pass by. This is the one being told by Eric Kapitulik, who knows a few good men who are preparing to stand in harm's way. It was a training mission.
As the platoon commander of 5th Platoon, and I'm responsible for all my men and the mission at hand. The mission that particular day was preparing for our upcoming deployment to the Persian Gulf. Looking out the side window, I remember thinking to myself that I can usually see the ship come into view relatively slowly. The only thing I remember thinking was, man, it seems like we're going faster than what we usually do. A couple seconds later, I felt the helicopter slam into the side of the ship. You could hear everybody inside pretty much yell, hey, hold on, we're going in. I woke up with the water hitting my face. I was just sort of pulling myself hand over hand through the helicopter, trying to get out of it as it was sinking.
This is not intruder.
7 men didn't make it, including Staff Sergeant David Galloway.
On the news, you hear of this helicopter crashing into the side of the ship, and the knowing that your husband's lost at sea. It was a terrible accident, but the Marine Corps to David was his life.
The accident and my men who died, I think about them every day. My men made me so proud and everything that they did, because they were a reflection of me. There's no way I can ever repay that friendship.
But he'll try. Eric has a series of sponsors and raises money by competing in races like this, so that all the children of those men lost will be able to look forward to college one day. Duty. Honor.
He is an amazing individual. When you've gone through something that has touched your family like it has ours, and just to know that he's doing this for my children is just, it's wonderful.
The only people in this that deserve any of the credit are the widows of my men and the families that they left behind. Just how well they've coped with the loss of their husbands, their fathers, and just what great Americans they are.
For some, there is more riding on what happens in the Ironman than most of us will ever know.
For our upcoming deployment to the Persian Gulf, the helicopter that myself and 10 of my Force Recon Marines was flying in. Rather than being in a 60-foot hover over the ship that we were practicing taking over, it came in too low and too fast and struck the side of it. When we take ships down, we wear between 50 and 75 pounds of gear, weapons, equipment, and ammunition. We carry M4 carbine long rifles, 45 caliber pistols, shotguns, blowtorches, and demolition gear. And every single one of my teammates and I is wearing a lead bulletproof vest. The helicopter pilot, recognizing his error, pulls on the collective, which would typically give lift to a helicopter. But on that particular day, the back left wheel of the helicopter that my teammates and I were riding in was stuck in this thick metal netting, causing the helicopter to become vertical in the air, invert on itself, and then plunge into the Pacific Ocean. When it did so, we were all immediately knocked unconscious. And we woke up sometime thereafter, still wearing 50 to 75 pounds of gear, weapons, equipment, and ammunition, with no idea on how to exit from that sinking helicopter and with no oxygen. So I fought and I pulled my way through the helicopter as it sank, looking for a way to egress from it. And then I started to swim. But only when I started to swim did I feel true fear. Fear that even this evening, so many years later, I still get scared thinking about that moment when I first started to swim. I'm Eric Kapitulik. I'm the founder and CEO of the program. The program is a team building and leadership development company. We have one mission: develop better leaders and create more cohesive teams. We have the privilege of doing so with more than 160 collegiate and professional athletic teams throughout North America annually. Many of those teams will do well this year. They'll win games. Because to do well, to win games, we need one characteristic: talent. Talent allows us to do well. Individuals can win games. What I'd like to share with you this evening, however, has nothing to do with talent nor about winning games. What I'd like to share with you is how we get that much better, because that much better allows us to compete for championships on whatever our chosen battlefield may be. As I said, I fought and I pulled my way through the helicopter as it sank, looking for a way to exit from it. And then I started to swim. But only when I started to swim did I feel true fear. I still get scared thinking about that moment when I first started to swim. Because the Pacific Ocean is a dark body of water. And my teammates and I, by the time that we had found a way to exit from that sinking helicopter, we were deep down in it. Although the helicopter blades had shorn off when the helicopter hit the water, the helicopter engines are still turning, so it's causing cavitation, bubbles to surround us. We're still wearing all of our gear and equipment. And I don't care how physically or mentally or emotionally tough we may think we are, none of us can hold our breath indefinitely. If we were to try to do it here this evening, at some point, naturally, our bodies would gasp for air and oxygen would go rushing into our lungs, except if you're 200 feet beneath the ocean surface. Then, when your body gasps for air, salt water goes rushing into your lungs. And because it does, you gag, and then more salt water goes rushing in to your lungs. That's called drowning. And my teammates and I had been underneath the water for so long, by the time that we started to swim, we were all drowning. Our worlds were shutting down on us. We're deep down in a dark body of water. Bubbles surround us. And I still get scared thinking about that moment when I first started to swim, because I can still remember thinking to myself when I first started to swim that I hope I'm swimming in the right direction. Making things more challenging for me at the time was that when the helicopter had hit the water, it had hit it with such violence that I had compound fractured my legs. So when I swam in a direction that I hoped was the surface while drowning, still wearing 50 to 75 pounds of gear, weapons, equipment, and ammunition, I did so using only my arms because I had a bone sticking out of my leg. Well, a few feet beneath the ocean surface, I could see sunlight filtering down into the ocean. And a few moments after that, I was on the ocean surface. And a few moments after that, a safety boat picked me up and I survived that particular day. Unfortunately, 6 of my 10 teammates on board with me did not. Within 1 month's time, we had 6 new teammates join our team, and we deployed to the Persian Gulf. And while we were there, we had a successful deployment. But while there, I decided that I would set up a college scholarship fund for the children of my deceased teammates. So should they choose to go to college one day, they would have the financial resources to do so. And then I had to figure out how I was going to raise money for that college scholarship fund. And the way that I decided that I would raise money for it was by competing in the world's longest endurance events, climbing the world's tallest mountains. Things that I already enjoyed doing, but now I figured I could do them for a bit more altruistic purposes, a bit more selfless purposes. So from Kuwait City, Kuwait, I signed up for Ironman California. The Ironman is a triathlon. It's a swim, a bike, and a run. It's a 2.4-mile swim, 112-mile bike ride, and then a marathon. One right after the other, no stopping. You hope. Well, we had a successful deployment, and when we came home, I did compete at Ironman California, but about a month before I did so, ESPN contacted me and asked me if they could follow me through that race as a human interest story. And they did. 3 months later, NBC Sports followed me through Ironman Hawaii, which is the World Championships on the Big Island of Hawaii. Since then till today, I've competed in and completed 8 Ironman triathlons. I've adventure raced from one side of the Kalahari Desert in South Africa to the other, from the Pacific Ocean across Costa Rica to the Caribbean. I've run across the state of Alaska. And I've summited 5 of the 7 summits, the tallest peaks on each of the 7 continents. A few years ago, I stood on the summit of Mount Everest for 6 minutes. As I said, I'm now the founder and CEO of the program. My teammates at the program, the men and women with whom I'm privileged to work with, they share very similar personal experiences with me, and we share exactly the same professional ones, working with more than 160 collegiate and professional athletic teams and corporations throughout North America annually. And what we know, not what we believe, what we know is that talent allows us to do well. It allows us to win games. But making a commitment to getting that much better every morning that we wake up, that much better allows us to compete for championships on whatever our chosen battlefield may be. The way we get that much better is very simple in theory. Make a commitment. Make a commitment to be a great teammate and a great team leader. That's it. Individuals win games. That much better allows us to compete for championships. The way we get that much better is by making a commitment to be a great teammate and a great team leader. That's it. Why? Because individual talent can win games, but great teams compete for championships, and great teams are comprised of 2 people, great teammates and great team leaders. We get that much better as individuals and as a team by making a commitment to being both. But before, what I would like to do first, though, is discuss what are the standards that great teammates consistently meet and exceed, and what are the standards that great team leaders consistently meet and exceed. Before I do so, let me just pause briefly to ensure that we understand each other's vernacular, that we understand each other's vocabulary. Great teammates consistently meet and exceed 2 standards. All of us on this call this evening have heard the term kids these days. Most of us use it daily. You will never hear myself, Jake McDonald, my teammate, whom you'll meet shortly, or any of our teammates at the program ever use it. Let me share just one story with you of why we don't. Coach Harper mentioned Corey Ross, who works with Coach Bartell out at East Lake. Corey Ross, then Captain Corey Ross, United States Marine Corps, was in Eastern Afghanistan when he and his teammates were caught in an enemy ambush. His vehicle took a direct hit with a rocket-propelled grenade, an RPG. An RPG is an area fire weapon. If I stand on one goal line and I shoot it at the other goal line, it might land somewhere on the other side of the 50-yard line. Corey and his teammates had the misfortune of taking a direct hit with an RPG. The man next to him was blown up. Every other member of the team sustained a massive injury and was knocked unconscious, except for one guy, the driver. The driver, he had a 6-inch piece of metal shrapnel come up through his shoulder, and he began to bleed to death. But rather than putting a tourniquet on his own wound, the driver, he continued to drive the vehicle and fight the enemy until he could place his vehicle outside of the kill zone, and in the process save every other member of his team, to include Corey Ross. That driver was 19 years old. That's just one reason why my teammates at the program, all men and women who have served in the U.S., British, or Israeli military, you will never hear us talk about the kids these days. The kids these days are no different than they were when we were the kids these days, when our grandparents were the kids these days. Who's different? We're different. Parents are different. Coaches are different. Teachers are different. Not the kids these days. There's warriors in this generation of young people. Warriors. And we've had the privilege of knowing them and serving with them. Every team has goals. World-class teams have goals and standards. Goals are what we want to achieve. Standards are how we are expected to behave while accomplishing them. Failure to achieve a goal, reattack it tomorrow. Failure to achieve a standard, that carries a consequence. The people, the young people who we serve with, who you coach, they're no different. Who's different? We're different. How? Because those young people, they grow up in homes. They play for teams, attend schools where everything is a goal. There are no consequences anymore. Goals are what we want to achieve. Standards are how we are expected to behave while accomplishing those goals. Failure to meet a goal reattack it tomorrow. Failure to meet a standard, that carries a consequence. Every team has goals. World-class teams have goals and standards. Great teammates consistently meet and exceed 2 standards. Number 1, they set the example in everything they do. Let me pause briefly and highlight that great teammates set the example. Unfortunately, we hear from Maine to California to Florida to Alaska and everything in between. Every coach in America wants to talk to us about this guy who leads by example. Everybody wants to talk to it. He gets as bigger, faster, stronger as he can in the off season. He goes full speed every snap of the football, gives 100% every day, works incredibly hard. He's just kind of quiet. He doesn't say anything. He leads by example. That's a lie. You're lying to that young man, lying to them. That is not leading by example. Preparing as best you can, giving 100% every single day and going full speed every time the football is snapped. That is not leading by example. But he's just kind of quiet. He doesn't say anything. That's called setting the example. And I love guys who do that. But they're not leaders because of it. It's the first standard that a great teammate consistently meets and exceeds. Second, great teammates hold their teammates accountable to achieving those high standards. Great teammates consistently meet and exceed 2 standards. Number 1, they set the example in everything that they do. Number 2, they hold their teammates accountable to achieving those same high standards. My teammates at the program and I, we appreciate how challenging it is to hold each other accountable. All of us want to be good friends to each other, and that's great, except when being good friends to each other becomes more important than being great teammates for each other. Because what my teammates and I know, what we know, what we have experienced, is that you go to the movies with good friends, but you go to battle with great teammates. Great teammates set the example, and then they hold their teammates accountable to achieving it. Great teammates consistently meet and exceed those 2 standards. Great team leaders consistently meet and exceed 2 standards. Number 1, they accomplish the mission. And don't ever make excuses for not doing so, like the coronavirus. An excuse for failing to accomplish the mission, like the coronavirus. We have a mission to be accomplished. It's our job as leaders to ensure our team accomplishes it, regardless of the adversity or enemy with which we are faced. Great team leaders consistently meet and exceed 2 standards. Number 1, mission accomplishment. Number 2, take care of your teammates. Taking care of your teammates can mean 1,000 different things. We simplify things at the program. This is how we take care of each other. Make every decision that we ever make, thinking about what is in the best interest of the team. The team. Make every decision we ever make, thinking about what is in the best interest of the team first. I appreciate and I thank God that none of you will ever be on the back of a sinking helicopter wearing 50 to 75 pounds of gear, weapons, equipment, and ammunition, with no idea on how to exit from it while drowning. with a bone sticking out of your leg. I thank God you'll never be actually in the back of that sinking helicopter. But all of us know that at some point in our lives, we're going to feel like we are. And if we've made a commitment to be a great teammate and to be a great team leader and been fortunate enough to surround ourselves with others who have made that same commitment, in our families first, and on all the teams of which we're privileged enough to be a part, then you and your team will swim to the surface. Whether you do so or not has nothing to do with how much talent we possess. All it has to do with is a choice we must make every morning that we wake up to be a great teammate and to be a great team leader. For myself and all of my teammates at the program, we hope you make the right choice. Personally, I'd like to challenge you to do so. Thank you very much. Coach Harper, Jake.
Yes, that was
Coach Harper.
unbelievable. That was unbelievable. Go ahead and we'll let Jake, you kind of introduce yourself, and guys, we've got the chat going. You guys, while he introduces himself, continue to ask those questions, and so both Eric and Jake can answer those for you. So Jake, take it away.
Yeah, Coach, thanks. Just Jake, I'll let Mac, I'm going to steal some of your thunder. So for the coaches that are out there, I'm going to let Mac introduce himself. But Mac is one of the owners of the program. He's one of the he is our lead football leadership instructor, and we are fortunate enough. I feel fortunate enough to have that he agreed to come on here tonight. So. I have to be here, Coach Harper. I get to be here. Mac is volunteering to be here. So I appreciate his being here. And he'll be able to help answer the Q&A. The only downside for me, of course, is Mac's going to start answering the Q&A. And I don't really look so good when Mac starts answering questions. So, Mac, I'll let you take it from here.
Thanks, Cap. Thanks, Coach. And good evening, coaches. My full name is Jake McDonald. Most people call me Mac. I was a Major United States Marine Corps. Graduated from Tufts University in Boston in 2000, where I was a 4-year starter and captain of the football team. Entered the Marine Corps shortly thereafter, became an infantry officer. I've done 3 combat tours, 2 to Iraq as light armored reconnaissance platoon commander, and 1 to Afghanistan with a scout sniper unit. Been the recipient of multiple awards for valor in combat, as well as a Purple Heart for being wounded in combat. Been a proud teammate at the program for the past 10 years. And as Cap said, I'm primarily our lead instructor for football, and I'm fired up to talk to you all tonight.
Well, thank you guys so much, Mac. Thanks for the introduction. So my first question for you, Eric, is the first one we have is, so how do we get these kids setting the example to be a leader, especially if, being vocal isn't in their nature?
I'm about the way that I would answer this, and Coach Harper, who does that? Do you know who that comes from, Coach? It's always good for us to know their name.
Yes, sir. That's from Matthew Zito. Yeah,
Coach Zito. Coach Zito, I would answer the question, except the answer I was going to give you is the one that I steal from Mac that I've heard him talk about with guys who, using your term about who might not be naturally vocal. I'd like to hear Mac's example of guys who might not be naturally good tacklers. Mac, you want to take this one?
Sure. Thanks, Cap. And, I really only thought of this, I think it was last month. We were working with doing one of these with a Big 12 football team. And same question came up, right, from one of the coaching staff at once again, a Big 12 football team. And hey, how do they get some of these developing leaders, these guys that aren't naturally vocal? How do they get them to take the next step? And as I thought about it, I've heard hundreds of coaches say that over the last 10 years. I've heard hundreds of athletes say that, football players. Well, hey, that's just not me. I'm just not a naturally I'm not a vocal guy, right? That's just not who I am. And as I thought about it, it kind of struck me that as football coaches, we wouldn't accept that for anything else. Because communication, first of all, we don't believe in the term vocal. Screaming crowd is vocal. Cheerleaders are vocal. We want to be effective communicators. That aside, though, communication, it's a skill, like any other skill, like pass blocking, like coverage, like throwing. It's a skill. Of course, some guys are better at it than others. Some are more naturally gifted communicators. Some are not good at it. The same can be true for tackling or throwing or pass blocking. Coach Harper, I can't imagine one of your linemen coming to you and saying, Coach, I'm just not naturally a good pass blocker. And then saying, well, don't worry about it, man. Just keep working hard. No, you would either get him better or he wouldn't play. Communication is the same thing. It's a skill. And just like pass blocking, how do we get a guy? How do we make him a better communicator? Reps. It's just like tackling, pass blocking, anything else. Put that young man in positions where he is forced to communicate. And hopefully he will get better. And if he does get better at communication, well, great, then he can be a leader for your organization. If he doesn't get better, well, then he can't be a leader. Just like you would bench a guy if he can't pass block, or bench a middle linebacker if he can't tackle. It's a skill like any others. It's something that we have to work on every single day.
Mac, I was listening for the coaches that are out here. I was on the phone yesterday morning with a defensive coordinator from a team in the American Athletic Conference, the AAC, and he's doing something with his guys that he wants to develop their communication skills. That really struck a chord with me, because when the program works with teams, we think of things like in the weight room, instead of the strength coach going through the entire workout with the team, make one of these younger people that you want to make a better communicator, communicate to them what the workout is, and then make them turn around and communicate it to the team. Okay, but what if we're in a state that maybe we're not back to that yet? We're only doing this virtually. Using his example was, he has Zoom calls, and those guys that he's trying to develop their communication skills of, he's making them in charge of the Zoom call. They run the Zoom call right now. And is that as good as, being able to communicate on Friday night? No, of course not. But you don't become good on Friday night, like Mac is saying, unless we get reps right now. And there's no reason to use COVID-19 as an excuse not to get reps. We can get reps everywhere communicating. I liked his example, though.
So, coaches, a follow-up to this, Coach Walls actually, it's coming from him, and he said, what are your standards of great communication?
You want to, Mac, or you want me to take it? I mean,
yeah, sure. Just a thought. One of the challenges is, guys figuring out, hey, what do I communicate? And that's for players, and that's certainly for coaches as well. And I think this definitely holds true for coaches. You have to be able to answer 3 questions at the end of every day. When I was a second lieutenant in the Marine Corps, my CO, my boss, maybe put a sign over my desk with these 3 sentences on it to make sure that we did it. Those 3 sentences are, what do I know? Who else needs to know it? And have I told them? What do I know? Who else needs to know it? And have I told them? Because far too often, we just make assumptions. I had smart Marines that worked for me. I knew what time the meeting was. I assumed that they knew what time the meeting was too. And maybe I didn't tell them. That's not their fault. That's my fault as the leader. With everything, with your installs, with everything you have to do offensive, defensively as coaches, hey, what do you know? Who else needs to know it? And if you haven't told them, make sure you do so. If you got to call up and talk to your D-line coach and make sure he knows the plan, even if you're pretty sure he does, but if you haven't told him, make sure he knows it. The same thing holds true for your quarterbacks, for your Mike linebackers, for your free safeties, for everyone on your team. If they have something that they know and other people need to know it, they need to communicate.
Matt, could you talk about, for Coach Walls, could you also talk about, here's the challenge about effective communication, Coach Harper. That is a standalone coaches clinic that we do, that that can take 4 hours. That's because, I mean, I don't care who you are. If you can't communicate, you can be a good football player. You're just never going to be the best teammate or best team leader that you can be. It's mission critical. It's just mission critical. We spend a lot of time developing it, not only when we're working with teams, but just working with coaches. But a couple of things, Mac, that I think are important that we see a lot, right, Mac, that I think is important for coaches that we highlight to coaches is, can you explain number one, clap, number two, a brief back?
Sure. Just to differentiate, when we work with teams as well, we always make sure to point out that we don't try to change the way that anyone talks. Everyone talks differently, right? Some guys are from Oklahoma, some are from Connecticut, right? Some are from California. Guys have different accents, different slang, different, they talk how you talk. We're not trying to change the way anyone talks. However, we communicate in very specific ways. And that's something that everyone can do. It's something that you learn in the Marine Corps training, right? All drill instructors sound the same, right? We're taught how to communicate. Doesn't matter what part of the country you're from. The acronym we use on how we communicate effectively is CLAP, C-L-A-P-P. The C stands for clear. With most people, that just means slow down your cadence. Make sure your audience can understand the message that you're trying to communicate. Make sure we're clear. L is loud. That's huge for young men. That's huge for football players as well. Make sure that everyone can hear you. Speak louder than you think you should. The A is authority. There's no place on the football field or in the weight room for anything wishy-washy. You need somebody to shift, tell them to shift, right? We use authority when we communicate with each other as warriors. The P stands for pauses. Just insert some pauses in your cadence, right? When you're breaking down scheme in between possessions, instead of just spitting everything out in 20 seconds, not allowing your athletes to uptake the information, put a pause in there. Let everyone catch up to what you're saying. Lastly, posture. 80% of our communication is nonverbal. You can say all the right things, but if your body language is negative or weak or lacks confidence, your message is going to be lost. Now, our recommendation for both coaches and athletes, it's probably unrealistic, not probably, it is unrealistic that anyone's going to do all 5 of those all at once anytime soon. So what we recommend for most people is pick one. Pick the one that we most need to work on. Hey, maybe we need maybe your center needs to be louder. Okay, let's just work on that. I'm not going to hammer him for the content of his message, but it better be loud. Or maybe we need to work on a guy's posture. We put him in front of the team once again, make him pull his shoulder blades back, stick his chest out, stick his chin up, project his voice. Clear, loud, authority, pauses, posture. Once a guy has mastered, at least gotten competent in one, then we can move on to the other ones. That's something for us as coaches, as leaders, to practice on a daily basis as well.
And brief backs, Mac.
Oh, yep. One of the other things that we use quite effectively in the Marine Corps, right, is a technique we call a brief back. I think back to my football playing days where coach would, and this is before iPads on the sideline and any of that thing, coach would drop a play, bunch of X's and O's, and then say, he'd draw up lines all over the place and then say, hey, anyone have any questions? Nobody ever had questions. I don't think anyone's ever had a question on the sideline. But then we would go back out in the field and nobody knew what they were doing. Same thing would hold true in the Marine Corps. That's why when we give a mission brief, or my CO would give a mission brief, we don't just end it with, hey, we good? Because once again, young Marines aren't going to ask questions. They'll go out and they'll just make the same mistakes. Instead, we utilize a brief back. As a leader, we'll call on guys. Whether it's in the military, we might call on the first squad leader, say, hey, what's your task? Right? What's second squad doing? If that's football, make guys repeat back to you what you said. Technique for coaches as well. We've seen teams use this to good success. But one of the mistakes that we do see, even when teams do it, there's a tendency for us to call on our studs. Because frankly, that makes us feel good. That, hey, we communicated our information good because I'm going to call on my stud and he's going to know it. That's not really helping. Our technique in the Marine Corps, we would call on our youngest, dumbest private. Right? I've been in the Marine Corps for 3 months because I knew, hey, if he knew it, Well, then all my staff NCOs and everyone else, they know it too. That also means that when you're in a meeting, you shouldn't have guys falling asleep or checking out or dialing out, because they know at any given moment they might be called on. Really helps the guys dial in as well.
Perfect, guys. Next question is again from Coach Zito. So he says, when a teammate does not live up to the standard, us as coaches, do we give consequences to that individual or to the group?
Yeah, Mac, I'll take this one if it's okay. I first with Coach Zito would highlight to him of we want to make sure that we highlight holding our teammates accountable. Let's take a step back. First, when we talk about what are our team standards, again, this can get into a 4-hour coaches clinic about creating and sustaining a championship culture. But first of all, the program believes in a value-based culture, okay? For any organization, a value-based culture. So first, we highlight to coaches, okay, first we got to figure out what our core values are as a team. 3, maybe 4. Values. Let me use the program as an example because I don't know Coach Zito's team's values. I'll use our own as a company. At the program, well, Mac, what's our culture?
Selfless, tough, and disciplined.
Yeah, I mean, you could ask anybody. Mac, this is an easy one. I mean, Mac's the football lead instructor. He's been with me for 10 years, right? I mean, you ask the person who sends out invoices for us in our marketing. You ask our interns for the summer right now what it means to be one of us. They're going to tell you it's selfless, tough, and disciplined. That's who we are. Now, that is set by the head coach. What the team's core values are is set by the head coach. The standards that reinforce those core values. Now, standards are different than team rules, just to highlight. A standard might be, we know our team rules. A standard could be, for selfless at the program, our standard is we hold our teammates accountable. Our standard to reinforce discipline, a standard that reinforces selfless is we hold our teammates accountable because we look at accountability as being a selfless act. It's uncomfortable for us to do so, all of us. So by holding somebody accountable, what we're signaling to that person is them being the best version of themselves is more important to me than my discomfort. That's why it's a standard of ours. We hold our teammates accountable. That reinforces our selflessness. Knowing our team rules, that's a standard that reinforces discipline. It's actually following our team rules, to be exact. But the point is, when it comes to standards for an organization, yes, the head coach sets the core values. What we challenge coaches on is let your team decide what the standards are that reinforce those core values. They own it then. They own it. And if not the whole team, because, I mean, football, a lot of guys on the team, there might be too many voices. At least your best people, not maybe best players, but your best people, those individuals that embody your core values on your team, let them figure out what the standards are that A, they're going to hold themselves to first, 2, that they're going to hold the other best people to, and 3, that they're going to hold the team to. Therefore, they own those standards, and hence they own your team's culture. Excuse me. It's critically important because coaches can only set the standard during practice. Outside of that, which is most of the day and most of the week, it's going to be the team that ends up achieving whatever standard they want to achieve. That helps give ownership, number one. Number 2, therefore, if we have a player on the team who is not meeting the standard, I'm going to the people who said these are the standards we want. I'm going to go to the best people and say, hey, this person isn't meeting the standard. What I thought these are the standards you said you wanted for yourself and that you wanted for the team, and you're not holding them accountable. Now, as the head coach, we determine the consequence always. It's too dangerous to let players figure out what the consequence is going to be. Coaches figure out what the consequence is going to be. The consequence may very well just be, hey, look, you're the guys who created the standard. Go talk to the guy. That's a consequence. He's got his teammates coming to talk to him about it. Maybe the consequence is, no, now you come talk to me. Other times it's, yep, I'm going to hold this individual accountable. He's going to pay the consequence. The only thing I would highlight to coaches is, this is a general rule of thumb. If I'm saying to the best people on my team, you own the team, you determine the standards that reinforce our culture, our core values. More often than not, they're the ones who I'm going to go to, and they're the ones who have to accept the consequence for the team. It helps develop ownership in the team. Now, to coach, the thing I really want to highlight very quickly, but I cannot say it enough, is this. All of us think accountability, and we immediately think negative. When the guy doesn't touch the line, when he does 9 reps instead of 10 in the weight room, when he gives 80%. Look, as leaders, yes, we have to hold people accountable when they are falling short. We must hold people accountable when they're meeting and exceeding the standards. If we're going to hold the best people accountable when somebody isn't meeting the standard, then when the team is meeting the standard, we've got to make sure that those individuals that we hold accountable when they're not, they also get a benefit for when the team does. Accountability need not be negative.
That's a great, great point. Next is coming from Coach Smith. Coach Smith says, we will only have 6 weeks to prepare for the season. What would give us the most bang for our buck with our leadership training focus? And then, my own thing on this is, you had mentioned to us, if a group bought, a book for the entire group, that you guys were doing some leadership training with them, maybe also touch on that with how long that would take. But that on top of, they got 6 weeks, what's the most bang for their buck leadership wise?
Mac, I'm going to have you answer the exact question about bang for the buck from a 6 weeks perspective to get ready. I would just like to, I appreciate you, pubbing being the hype man for the
I'm
program
wanting to
book.
do it. I'm wanting to do it. I think everyone else would love to do it too.
Well, if a coach buys a copy of Max and I, we're the co-authors of the book, The Program. You can find it on Barnes & Noble. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it at the program website. If a coach buys a copy of our book for every member of their squad, then we will do a leadership curricula with them on a weekly basis, a 7-week process. It's actually 6 weeks, because the 7th week about communication is highlighted every single week. But a 6-week course, 1 hour a week, about the book, about the 7 sections in Max and my book, The Program. So I appreciate that. Mac, before I turn it over to you, though, the one thing I feel compelled to talk to the coaches about, because it's something that I've heard you talk about, and I know you've heard me talk about, to so many of the college teams that were privileged enough to join with on a weekly basis now for either their team meetings or their leadership council meetings, is this. This gets back to the accountability question, and it also touches on the 6 weeks to get ready. Right now, it's May 20th. So I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but I know that puts 6 weeks from today, July, beginning of July. I know ball doesn't start. I know ball starts later than that. And I appreciate what coach is saying. Hey, by the time we get back, we're going to have 6 weeks to get ready together. I don't disagree with that. The thing that Mac and I have been hammering every single week since the quarantine started, every single week, every single meeting with the college teams across the country that we're privileged to work with is we can talk about team accountability, team accountability, team accountability. Don't ever forget it starts with personal accountability. Coaches, that means us. That means us first. We don't ever ask our Marines to do something that we're not willing to do ourselves. You're asking your guys to work out during this time. We better be working out ourselves during this time. We're asking our football team, the players on it, to be great teammates and great team leaders to their teams. We've got to make sure we're being great teammates and great team leaders to our teams. It's personal accountability. And in fact, whether you're talking high school or college, the teams, the individual players that show the greatest personal accountability right now, they're gonna crush it this fall because everybody's gonna have 6 weeks to get ready with their coaches in front of them. It's very difficult to make a difference compared to the next guy in those 6 weeks when the coaches are standing over you. But man, as a team, if people can be disciplined enough and we as coaches can continue to hammer that home, show players, hey guys, look, right now, this is how I'm being personally accountable. Make everything we can, the little things on a daily basis. Those teams that can be more personally accountable right now, it's not 6 weeks. They've got 3 months before the season starts, and they can make a real difference right now. Mac?
So, Coach, to kind of answer your question, when we at the program, when we work with teams, typically the way it looks, we do 2 days on campus, right? We take teams through a version of special operations selection, working on a lot of the same lessons that my teammate Cap already talked about. But then it's a year-long engagement. We're back on campus. We attend games. We go to practice. We do Zoom sessions with their athletes, with their leaders. But to be honest, there's some teams that we work with, unfortunately, that it's just the 2 days because, frankly, they're looking for a bang for their buck. I understand what you're getting at, Coach, but it's the 2 days with us, and then they probably don't ever talk about any of those things. It's back to ball, right? There is no, it's either football or it's leadership, right? And they may not think about the stuff we talk about until we're back on campus next year. I think that's missing the boat. I think that's a mistake. The more you can work these things in to your regular activities, the more bang for your buck you're going to get because it's going to stretch out through the whole season. One of the things that we talk the most about when we talk about developing leaders, we give developing leaders 3 things. We give them a task, a condition, and a standard. 3 things: task, condition, standard. The task they have to accomplish, the conditions they have to work under, the standard it gets done to. Simple example of that is the locker room. I know that drives coaches nuts, having a messy locker room, because yes, that does carry over to the field. We have to be disciplined in all aspects of our lives. But football coaches got to coach football. They got a lot on their plate, especially you guys teaching and everything else. Got a lot of responsibilities. Cleaning the locker room is just one more. So we recommend instead take one of those developing leaders, maybe one of the guys that we need to be more vocal, to use that term, to be a better communicator. Put him in charge of the locker room. Tell him plainly, you don't have to use task, condition, standard, but tell him, hey, stud, you're in charge of the locker room. Look, you've got a vacuum. There's a mop bucket in the closet. Your standard, here's what it's going to look like. Right? All the helmets are going to be on the right side of the locker and so on. And then as Cap said before, if you walk in the locker room the next day and somebody else other than this kid left his cleats out, we don't yell at that kid. We don't yell at the team. The guy that you put in charge of the locker room, you say, hey, come here, stud. Right? And he comes into your office and you hold him accountable. Because then he will hold his teammates accountable. The more we can do that, the more bang for your buck you're going to get. Now, sure, there's some football stuff that you all are the subject matter expert. You got to coach. You know your stuff. But I would wager that you have some guys on your team that can run a daily warm-up maybe. Some of your drills that you do, there's guys that can run that. There's guys that you can give them a task, condition, standard, tell them what needs to be done, and then if it's not done to your standard, you then hold them accountable. And that should be in pretty much everything you do. That's not just a 2-day thing. It's not a preseason thing, right? It's everything we do throughout the season. That's how we develop, guys.
Okay, the next one is coming from Coach Sells. Coach Sells says, do you agree with allowing players to vote for a player committee and then leaders, captains selected from that list?
Mac, you want it, or you want me to take it? What do
You can take it.
Yeah. It's funny, Coach, right? And I know it's because, Mac and I look a certain way, so they probably think like we're going to be like, no, my God, screw them. You know what I mean? Everything else. Meanwhile, the thing that we always highlight is Mac and I once swore an oath that said that we would give our lives for the right to vote. I mean, in effect, right? Like, so no, we're all about the right to, not the right, but an opportunity to vote from players. The thing that we highlight to coaches always is, like with anything on the team, players give suggestions. The head coach makes the final decision for everything. But we're not opposed to the right to vote. It can be part of the decision-making process for sure. I would say this, Coach Harper, I think that what we really stress to coaches is, outside of developing better leaders and how to do it, how to select team captains is what we get asked about. So, I mean, constantly. And as coaches, we're so stressed out trying to figure out the perfect way to select team captains because, I'm not going to make this into a political discussion, but we end up a lot of time with our team captains trying to select team captains like we're trying to select the president. Like, we end up with choices that maybe at least many of us might, well, I don't like either choice really, you know what I mean? So I gotta choose one here, right? And again, I'm not making a political statement at all with this. But the reason for this, the stress about the best way to select them is, if we just did a better job developing them, taking lion cubs who are freshmen, who show great promise, and developing them. Don't wait till they're seniors before we develop their communication skills. Don't wait till they're seniors before they get held accountable. Do task conditions and standards with some of the freshmen, some of the sophomores, the juniors, that who ends up being on our leadership council, who ends up being our team captains, it ends up taking care of itself. If we can more stay focused, not on the selection, but more on the development of who our team captains or leadership council is going to be. Mac, am I missing anything?
No, you're not, Cap. Just a quick specific technique that I like. One of the college lacrosse teams with whom we work, they won a national championship a couple years ago. Their technique when they vote for captains, they do a vote. However, the team's vote, it counts for a third. Then the assistant coaches vote. Their vote counts for a third. And then the head coaches, it counts for a third too. So you got to win 2 out of 3. So that ensures that it's not just a popularity contest, right? Because, coach even said, well, hey, if both the assistant coaches and the team really want a guy as a captain, well, then I'm probably wrong. But that rarely happens. But that's a good I found it to be a good checks and balances system that's worked.
Love it. So the next one is actually from Coach Bartell, which again we've talked about and has the program out at his high school. And he says, can you guys discuss the command, coach, mentor model? He says it's something that he's found to be really important to know and understand for his high school, for his football program.
Mac, I almost hesitate to say this because of the drama that we had playing one video at the start of the presentation. Are you up for trying to pull up the slide of command, coach, and mentor? Should we try to add any additional AV to this presentation here tonight, or is it going to shut down the whole webinar? I don't want to do that.
I have it.
You have it ready to go?
Yep.
Can you share your screen and talk through it? Coach Harper, you might have to make Mac one of the hosts if he can't share his screen.
I can share.
Okay.
Can we see that?
Good, Mac.
Good. So kind of before we talk about that, Coach Bartell, I know we met at the AFCA this past year, and just a quick kind of funny story. I attended the convention. Cap and I, we usually go every year, and this past year, a lot of times what I do is we're just building relationships and seeing coaches we knew, and a lot of times I'll go see the coaches that we know present. One of whom was Jeff Collins for Georgia Tech. So he was speaking at it was a high school speech with a couple other coaches. He was a panelist. So I got there early, and there was a high school coach, crowded packed house, giving a presentation. So I just kind of sat in the back room, and then coach started talking about mentor, coach, and command. And then I started to think, wait a second, okay, who's this guy? What's going on here? And then as he kept talking, he then threw out how this is something he got from Eric Kapitulik and Jamie Slife and Corey Ross. So then I knew that he wasn't just somebody copying us. It was one of our brothers. So glad to have you on here tonight, Coach. So when we talk about roles of a leader, Cap earlier talked about the standards of a leader, right? That of mission accomplishment and taking care of our people. We also believe that every leader has 3 roles that they got to fill every single day. That of mentoring, coaching, and commanding. By definition, mentoring, that's about your culture. That's what it means to be one of you, how you define your culture. Coaching, that's football. That's blocking, tackling, catching. Commanding, that's just here. You go here, you do this, right? That's game day play calls. Rather than just blocks, it looks more like a pyramid for a few reasons. One, the base of any great program needs to be their culture, that mentorship. Because there's no point in just telling guys what to do, or even there's only so much we can coach them up. But hey, if they're not one of us, if they're not tough or disciplined or whatever our culture is, we're not going to compete for championships. More so, though, as a function of time. Mentoring, that takes a lifetime. That takes a long time. Commanding, that's pretty quick. You go here, you do this. Now in the military, we have to decide with each individual Marine, how much time do we spend at each level? Your school administrations, they tell you how much time you can coach. Most of you, that's already decided. You've only got so much time in the week that you can do ball. So now you have to figure out with each guy, how much time do you spend mentoring him and how much time do you spend commanding him? One of the biggest mistakes we see at all levels, high school, college, professional ball, is that when we bring young men into our programs and we mentor them, as we should, to make them more disciplined, to make them tougher, to try and build, make them more selfless. But there are some guys that are in our programs that we try and mentor and they just don't change. At the end of the year, they're no more tough, they're no more selfless than they were when they first walked into your program. But we don't want to give up. So the next year, we keep trying. And we keep plugging away. And the next year after that. And maybe we never make a difference. And eventually, we find ourselves at the point where we're spending 90% of our energy on 10% of our team. Meaning there are other young men on your team who absolutely deserve your mentorship, and they're not getting it. Because you're just trying so hard to change this guy who just won't change. So eventually we recommend there has to come a point when we have to be able to flip that triangle upside down. Notice the coaching part, that's not going to change. No matter what, I'm still going to coach you up. I'm going to teach you how to play football. But I'm just going to spend the majority of my time commanding you. Making sure you go to class, making sure you're lined up in the right spot in the field. I'm not going to give up. I'm still going to mentor a guy, but only for just that little bit that you see at the tip of the triangle at the bottom. Good call. Once a guy doesn't even deserve that little amount of mentorship, that's time for him to leave the program. When you flip this triangle upside down, can't tell you that. That's part of the art of coaching. I will say this, though. Just about every coaching staff that we've talked to, and usually it's because we have an individual in mind, as do they, But every time we've talked to a coaching staff about this and they've then done it, usual feedback is, we should have done that last year. Again, you're not giving up on a guy. Keep in mind that as leaders, head coaches, coordinators, positional coaches, your allegiance is not to the individual as much as you might love them. It's to your unit. It's to the offense. It's to the whole team. It's to the defensive line. And when you're spending all your energy on one or two guys that don't give you any return on your investment, you're letting the rest of your room down. Keep that in mind.
Awesome. That right
Yes.
there is why that right there is, that's a good indication of what I was saying earlier. That's why Mac instructs teams, and I go to events with Mac and stand on the sideline and try to look official. So
that makes sense, and I'm glad that it didn't tear down the internet again, because it was a great slide. Okay, our next one is from Coach Sale. I might be saying that wrong, S-A-L-L-E, but I'm gonna say that's Sale. He says, "What are ways that we can present kids with adversity to help teach them to overcome it?"
yeah, I think you know, first of all, Coach, and I always go back to first and foremost parents. And I know a lot of coaches at all levels are, well, we keep parents at arm's length. I bring that up because parents have got the ear of that young person more than a coach does, for the most part. And those parents, they're either going to be part of the solution or they're going to be the problem in any organization. They'll be part of the solution or they're going to be the problem. So the more that we can communicate with parents about what we're doing and why we are doing it with, and how they can help that process. It obviously, look, we've been doing this long enough, as I'm sure Coach has as well. We know that doesn't guarantee success. You're still going to have parents who just don't do it. We get it. But the better job we can do of that, the better our chances are of getting a good outcome, or at least that they may help us. Not doing it, that even though it may not guarantee success, not doing it, it definitely guarantees failure. So number one, because as coaches, we are going to want to have our players on an individual level and on a team level face adversity. All of us should, though. There is no middle ground in life. There is no true thing in life as just maintaining. That's not Eric Kapitulik or Jake McDonald or the program that believes that. That's science. Biology teaches us grow or die. There's no middle ground. So it's not even our players. First, I'll keep going back to it. What are we doing as coaches? And taking a step back, what are we doing as fathers and as mothers? Are we getting outside of our comfort zone? Don't ever ask your Marines to do something you're not willing to do yourself. It's the first rule of leadership. Are we doing that? Number one. Number two, assuming that we are. Number two, when it comes to adversity, what we believe is, and it's, I'll use this as an example now. It just happened. We've used it for a dozen years now. It just happens to be very timely right now. When we talk about adversity, we talk about stress inoculating people. It's like a vaccine. You give a little bit of it to people at a time so that they can handle a little bit more of it in the future. We've gotten away, though, even just physically speaking. Let's talk about physically speaking. We've gotten away from the 30 years ago, the idea of no pain, no gain, right? Just lift a lot, eat a couple of strawberry frosted Pop-Tarts, put more plates on, throw up. You know, now there's the science of strength and conditioning is so much better. It produces bigger, faster athletes. But that idea of no pain, no gain, man, that made you tougher. One of the things that we challenge coaches on when we're talking about forcing some adversity into the lives of our athletes, there's a couple of very easy ways to do it. And some, yes, are physical, right? Stress them physically, not hurt. Stress them physically. Number one, always on the outside of their comfort zone. But we know that. We always think about that as coaches. Second, though, you want to stress players out. Again, we don't use the term kids these days, but we do say, look, this generation did grow up with certain technological benefits that are even Mac and my Coach Harper that we didn't have, like the internet. And they've had it since they were born. And with the internet comes information, it comes knowledge. So you want to stress players out. Yeah, just don't give it all to them. Instead of saying, hey, this is our practice schedule for the day, and then every player can see exactly what's on the practice schedule for the whole day. Yeah, just don't do it. The unknown causes stress. Look for those ways to constantly stress inoculate our team. And it can be physical, certainly. It can be mental by withholding information, and then emotional. We just don't allow emotional outbursts. Coaches and players. Football, contrary to what football coaches tell us across the country, football is not an emotional sport. Close your eyes and picture the last emotional encounter you had with somebody else. Chances are, for most of us, we're thinking about our spouse, and it wasn't a good outcome. Now, close your eyes and think about the last interaction you had with somebody who was passionate about something. Chances are, it was a pretty good conversation. Football's not an emotional sport, or shouldn't be. It is a passionate sport, though. It is. Let's make sure that we're mission-driven, not emotion-driven. What does that mean? It means we all get natural human emotions. Happiness, sadness, anger, frustration. When we do, take one deep breath and think, that's the key word, think, how do I react to this natural human emotion to help my team accomplish its mission? And my team can be my wife or my spouse. It can be my football team, whatever it might be. We are all on lots of teams, and we all get natural human emotions. Take one deep breath, make it a habit, and think, how do I respond to this natural human emotion that will best help my team accomplish its mission? Continuously do it on a until it becomes habitual. All of those things, physically, withholding information, the emotional stress that comes in our daily lives, make it a habit to take a deep breath. All of those are ways that we can stress inoculate the really big adversity that we face throughout our life.
Cap, you just mentioned, how important parents are. And I actually had something on my way back home from, baseball practice with my son. He calls me, I had to leave a little early, calls me and I don't think I handled it the perfect way. So curious how you guys would have gone through this, but he calls me, says, Dad, he's 6 years old. Dad, my team's not very good. They goof around all the time. And basically says, I'm the only one that is good on the team, and everyone else is just goofing around all the time. And kind of made me angry. I try to build him up and want him to think he's awesome and can do great things, but also, don't want him to think he's the best and doesn't have to work anymore. And I get upset with him and say, well, you're not the best at hitting and you're not the best at catching right now. And and then go through and tell him as a 6-year-old, hey, if your team's goofing off and you want your team to be better, who do you think should be telling your teammates, it should be you? But I wasn't necessarily happy with how I went through that. Curious with a 6-year-old or a young kid, which maybe is in your expertise or maybe it's out of it a little bit. I know you guys work with older people. What would be the way you guys would have handled that, a similar situation or that situation exactly?
Yeah. Well, I will say this, Coach. I know that being a parent, I've got an 8-year-old son and I've got a 3-year-old daughter. Being a parent has made me a better coach. Period. End of story. It just has. And the reason why is that as a parent, we end up in 1,000 of these situations, don't we? I mean, every day there's incidences like this that either we're going to use them as a learning tool or not, right? Mac, I'd love to hear your thoughts. About it. Mac's a dad as well of young children. But Coach, just for me, this is why getting back to what I was saying earlier about values. The programs, our team values are selfless, tough, and disciplined, because those are my core values: selfless, tough, and disciplined. When I dropped my son off at school in the morning, well, when we did, I would walk to his classroom with him. And before the start of the day, I would ask him, Axel, what do we got to be today? We got to be selfless, Daddy. What's it mean to be selfless? What's it mean to be tough? What's it mean to be disciplined? We do what we say we're going to do, Daddy. Okay. I'm sorry. Well, selfless. We put the team first. What's it mean to be tough? We do what's right, not what's easy. What's it mean to be disciplined? We do what we say we're going to do. All right. That makes me proud. No matter what. And he goes, Daddy will always love me. That's right. Have a great day. I coach him in sports that he plays. I'm fortunate enough that I have a job that allows me to do so. Whether it's he or any of his teammates. Selfless, tough, and disciplined. Selfless, tough, and disciplined. If you win, I'm happy for you. Let me highlight again, I'm happy for you. I'm not happy myself. You're a bunch of 6 and 8-year-olds. Like, you winning this game does not it's not a reflection on me. It's that this year we got these 2 kids from our town and they're really good and they're going to win a lot of games because of it this year, right? It's not my coaching. No, I feel like the better job I can do, the younger he is, of being the best, well, first, not friend, but father to him, and father being a mentor in using these situations like you're talking about, Coach. Again, it doesn't guarantee success when he's 18, but I know not doing it is going to guarantee failure. Specifically, every conversation we have is about selfless, tough, and disciplined. Now, look, if he scores a goal, pins a guy in wrestling, scored a touchdown, whatever it might be, he's going to be happy and he's going to want to talk about it. And of course, I'm going to talk to him about it, but only after we talk about selfless, tough, and disciplined. Think about that as a parent. When you get done with a game, kids walk off the field. What is the first thing most parents say? Oh my God, that was a great goal you had. Okay, you're going to know what your kid's going to know that you value? Goal scoring goals. And I'm not going to say it's not important. Of course it's important. It's just not the most important thing for us, for Team Kapitulik. I keep going back to our values every single day, because ultimately what Axel and my daughter, she's 3, what they end up doing in life, man, I hope they do something that's going to make them happy. If that includes the Marine Corps and climbing Mount Everest and doing special operation and all these things, oh, hey, great. Okay, great. But those are going to have to be their decisions in life. I hope they do what they want to do, not what Dad did or Mom did. Do what they want to do and be happy with it. I hope. Who they are, no, that's a lot more important to me than what they do. So I'm going to keep going back to my value system constantly when I'm having those conversations, Coach. And by the way, with that in particular, with that specifically, the thing that kind of rings true to me is I'm always trying to build up my son to be able, hey, go talk to your coach about it. because I know that kids that are 18, they still can't talk to their coach about it. They still keep calling home to their parents. You try to instill it young, you know. Mac, any thoughts, any additional thoughts?
Yeah, just so first of all, my son is turns 5 tomorrow, but so we're still in the Paw Patrol phase, not quite at the baseball phase yet. Haven't really had any of those conversations yet. But one of the things that we hear that I see teams do all the time, one of the things that mistakes that coaches make quite a bit. Both Cap and I were in a lot of locker rooms throughout the year at all various sports. Cap said it in his speech. If we're going to be successful, if we're going to compete for championships, we need both goals and standards, right? Once again, goals are things we want to achieve. Standards are how we're expected to behave. They back up our values that Cap was talking about. Yes, goals are important. We need them. Winning is important, no doubt. However, there's been countless times where I'm in a locker room just having watched a team on the fields not live up to any of their standards, play undisciplined, play lazy, play slow, not meet any of their standards, but they win because maybe they're an FBS team playing a lower tier opponent, and they win. They're just better. But then in the locker room, there's music after the game. There's music playing. Everyone's dancing. It's all good. Then I can see a different team the very next week, and it's the exact opposite. They meet all of their standards. They exceed all of their standards. Guys are flying to the ball. They're playing with passion. They're communicating. But maybe the other team's just better. Maybe there's just a talent gap that they couldn't overcome. But then in that locker room, everyone's crying, right? Sometimes fights are breaking out, right? The world's ending. Neither of those teams are going to compete for championships. Yes, winning, lose is important. We have to stay focused on our standards. If we're winning games because there's a talent gap, but we're not meeting our standards, eventually we're going to get punched in the face. If we're losing games, but we're meeting all our standards, eventually it's going to go our way if we have faith. So that's my plan with my son and daughter, right? To stay focused on the things we can control, right? Our behavior each and every day, while also teaching them winning is important, right? We got to have goals in our life, but it's how we're behaving every day that is going to drive those.
Great. Thank you, guys. Thank you for that, and thanks for letting me go off on a little tangent and ask about that. So getting back to the chat, Coach Jackson says, how often are you guys meeting, or how often should guys be meeting as a staff and coaching, mentoring, and holding each other accountable as a staff to improve? And what is the best way to do this when you're, with your peers or with your subordinate coaches?
Mac, you want me to take it? I'm good either way. Yeah. I'm fumbling around here, Coach Jackson, just because there's 1,000 questions I want to ask in return, right? Which things like, well, what time of the year are we talking about, right? Like, are we talking about now in the coronavirus? Are we not? Like, the environment would change our answer, okay? I'll say this. Before, the program would meet all of us together monthly, because the real reason is I couldn't get everybody together at one time. Everybody's gone all the time, everywhere. You couldn't get even, and I'm not even talking about, well, maybe we're missing 1 or 2 guys. No, we have 12 full-time teammates at the program. 10 of them would be gone working an event at some times during the year, okay? So it's not a meeting if it's 2 people. That's called a phone call. So now we have meetings every single day at 9 a.m. And I mean, Mac probably won't say it with me being here, but I hope he admits that I think it's the best thing that we do as a company is meet every single day. Initially, I thought, man, is this going to be too much? Now we meet Monday through Friday every single morning at 9 a.m. On Fridays, I miss it. I miss that. And yes, a lot of the times we are BSing. Other times we're just saying, hey, look, this is what I did yesterday. This is what I'm going to do today. Is the best thing we do. Because if we are not communicating, there will be darkness. And we don't need darkness. Darkness causes anger, fear, frustration, the unknown. We've got to shed light. And the way that we shed light is by communicating and over communicating. Now, Coach Jackson, as it pertains to holding each other accountable, we are right now, we just spent 7 days reviewing our core values, how we define them, and our standards. We just finished it yesterday. Today and tomorrow, as a company, we meet to discuss what our goals are. Goals are secondary and important to us, to core values and standards, for the reason that Mac just said. If we're true to our core values and we can meet our standards every single day, then whatever goals we set, we're going to meet. Eventually, we'll meet all of them. With us, and as far as it becomes, as a staff, in holding each other accountable, one of the things that we do with teams, Coach Jackson, and you don't need us there to do it, but we tend to facilitate this, but you can do it on your own, and we talk about it in our book, is everybody in the room, all the coaches come together in the room, and you can do it on Zoom if you'd like. Everybody comes together, sits around a table, when we can do that type of stuff, right? But say there's 12 people sitting around a table. The head coach starts. Everybody at that table tells the head coach one thing they do that helps the team win. Then everybody at the table tells the coach one thing they do that if they addressed it, it would help the team win more. They start with the head coach. And then we go all the way around the room, every single other coach, with every single other coach on that table telling the coach being given feedback, the one thing they do well, the one thing they do that if they could address it, it would help the team win more. Have that conversation. Coach, when we do that, Coach Harper, and we suggest it, and we're doing it, and we're running it with organizations, you know what defensive coaches say, offensive coaches say? Well, how am I supposed to hold a defensive coach accountable? Like, I don't know what goes on inside their room. The thing that we say immediately is, okay, but you tell your offensive players that you want to hold the defense accountable, and you tell the defense you want to hold the offense accountable. So I don't know what you're telling them to do, something you're not willing to do yourself. No. Well, I've not been here very long. You've been here long enough. Make accountability as a staff, like we suggest with players, make it systemic in your organization. If it's systemic, if it's, hey, this is what we do. We debrief practice. Everybody has a chance to say, hey, look, this is what I did well. This is what I think we need to do better. This is what I think you did well. I think that you need to do this better. And we just communicate about it. When we make it just part of the fabric of who we are, so that it doesn't have to get personal. It's not me saying, Mac, you're screwed up, or him saying, Cap, you're wrong. No, we at the end of every event that we do at the program, we come together and we say, hey, look, this is what went well. This is what didn't. Hey, look, this is what you did well. I think that if you do this, it would help our team get better. We have to have a mindset. We have to drive home a mindset. I'm at fault all the time about this. It's something that I feel is the number one thing I have to work on as a leader, as a father, as a husband, as the CEO of the program, is I have to continuously remind myself, look, what good is it to figure out who's at fault? Figure out who to blame. Instead, have the mindset of, what do we need to do to get better? That's it. What do we need to do? That means every single one of us is going to have to do something for us as an organization to get better. If everybody has that mindset and everybody trusts each other, that's why we're talking about, this is what we do well, this is what we need to do better. It then makes accountability. It stops accountability from being personal, and it makes it just part of systemic. It makes a culture of accountability in our organization. And the accountability is not, as I said, on a personal level, it's accountability to each other and to our team to make the team as best as it can become. we got to make sure that as leaders, we have that mental switch of, let's not figure this out to figure out who we can blame. Let's just figure out how we can get better and do it for each other and for the organization. Mac, any additional thoughts about that?
Great, guys. In the chat, some of the guys, we had a guy talking, his name is Carter Whitson. He said, which we know, and he's now a coach in Oklahoma, but he says he worked with the program, I believe, when he was a player at Indiana. He said you guys had an enormous impact on the team and staff. He said never been so scared and intrigued in his life. And he goes on to mention that something now that he's a coach that he still uses with his staff is text to share information, call to communicate. Curious if you guys could go through, I'm sure it's a little self-explanatory, but go through that a little more in depth.
Yeah, Mac, I'll let you handle it, but I'll say what's up to Carter. It's nice to hear him, and I always get a kick out of, and as I know Mac does, we always get it's like the best part of our job when we run into guys that we worked with. I'm sorry that it was a fearful relationship for you, Carter, but it's still nice to reconnect. Mac, you want to talk about that piece?
Yeah, so I kind of already talked about the difference between. I already spoke about the difference between talking and communicating. I think something, especially now, and I'm stealing this. I heard a corporate team use it last week through Corey Ross, one of our teammates, and he taught to us, especially now when we're communicating with our teammates, take whatever level of communication we would use in the past and add one to it. Which means now, if there's somebody that you would normally text, call them. If there was somebody that you would normally call, and this isn't just football, this is your family and everything else, do this with them, right? Send them a Zoom, right? Or even if it's somebody that maybe you would just send an impersonal email to, well, now personally text them, right? Just go one level higher than what you would normally do so we can keep that connection going. But Carter, you're absolutely correct though, right? If we just need, hey, what time is the meeting? A text can suffice. But if we're trying to communicate with our teammates and pass information and hold guys accountable, right? We need that human connection. Right, a text isn't going to. A text or an email just doesn't cut it in that side. So that we need to make sure we can call, or even better, do it face to face when we can, or at least through via Zoom or something else.
Back in one of the things as a kind of a litmus test for all the coaches that are out there, if you're on a text message, and that at any point in that text message, it causes one of those natural human emotions for you to feel, then it's no longer passing logistics. Like Mac is saying of, hey, practice is at 9 a.m. If you get a text that says practice is at 9 a.m., that does not create a natural human emotion. That's okay, got it. Well, coach, why are we having practice at 9 a.m.? Now as a coach, now I get an emotion of, what does he mean that because I said so, because this. As soon as we're in a text exchange and we get a natural human emotion, we stop texting and we pick up the phone and call. Or, as Mac's saying, now set up a time to Zoom.
Okay, so I think we're kind of wrapping up, but I kind of have one, and it might be kind of a hack type of question, but what I always hear from people in the military is a lot of times they talk about, making their bed every morning. And because, for multitudes of reasons, but the one that always intrigues me is because you accomplish something, very first thing you do, you're getting something accomplished. I'm curious, obviously we can't go and check our kids' beds every day. So Mac or Eric, have you guys talked through or found anything maybe specific for football that would be similar to, hey, come up here to football and make your bed every day?
Well, yeah, I want to admit to everybody that, the first time I made my bed in probably years was this morning. And you know why I made it this morning? First of all, the equivalent of making your bed to me is feeding the chickens. I live on a farm here. I got chickens outside. The first thing I do every day is I go feed the chickens. So that would be the name of my book. It's not Make Your Bed. It would be called Feed the Chickens. But the first time I made my bed in years was actually this morning. You know why I did, Coach Harper? Because I was on this Zoom call yesterday, and I'll give him credit for it, with Randy Shannon, Coach Shannon at UCF. And I'm sorry, it was yesterday. I was on the Zoom call with he and his defense. And they're doing a challenge this week, which is the Make Your Bed Challenge. So I won't talk all about the details, but by a certain time every day, they have to, by position group, they have to send in a picture of their bed that's made. And again, it's not mandatory. It's a challenge. There's nothing. He's just saying, do you guys want to do it? In the group, the position group that sends in the most pictures of the thing, they're going to get a benefit for it, for doing so. I heard him talking about this yesterday. This is just after I got done talking about don't ever ask your Marines to do something you don't do yourself. This morning, I made my bed and I sent my picture to Coach Shannon. He texted me back immediately with a picture of his bed that was made and some trash talking about the way I make my bed, right? So I thought it was an awesome idea because, again, right, I mean, there's rules and there's NCAA rules. There's probably rules in your district and things like that might allow you or not allow you to be, invasive in that way to make it mandatory or not. I thought the way he did it was just, hey, you show that you're up and getting after. I love the idea. Mac, any other thoughts?
Yeah, just something that I've seen work with teams. Leading young Marines, it's really not that different, right, from being a coach. As Cap said before, we don't believe in kids these days because the average Marine is 19 years old. So the majority of my platoon, when I was a platoon commander, were barely removed from high school. Like high school kids, it's unrealistic to expect them to be serious and dialed in and focused for 24 hours or 12 hours, or whatever it is. That just ain't going to happen. And we're going to tear our hair out if we have any, right? Trying to do that. So what we recommend is, okay, make sure it's clearly delineated. Because I know as an athlete, there were times when, hey, it was okay to screw around with coach, but hey, now it's time to get back to business. And guys keep messing around. And I know that drives coaches nuts. It used to drive me nuts too in the military. Let's find a way to clearly delineate that. So one of the things that we do when we work with teams, all our commands, we give a preparatory command, which is we'll yell ready. The team yells ready back to us. We yell attack, right? And then they attack whatever task they're doing. One of the teams who worked with us, an ACC football team, I was at a lifting session with them a couple of years ago. Walked in, it was 6 a.m. And of course, young athletes, they're messing around, listening to music, dancing, kind of messing around. And just like young men would do, strength coach walked in front of the team, yelled ready. Everyone else yelled ready. And then everything stopped. No messing around, nothing. It was time to whoop it on, and they lifted hard for 45 minutes. Then when they were done, coach said his final words. They went back to the locker room, and guys started joking around and laughing again, right? We have to give our young men time to be just young men, time to mess around, whether that's when they're at the water coolers or something else, but whether it's a word we use, whether it's, hey, when you buckle your chin straps or when you cross the yard line, whatever it is. So guys know that, okay, I'm not going to get yelled at, right, for messing around with the guys during this time, but now I got to whoop it on 100% when we're on here. And then we can give them time to kind of go back to being young men. So found that to be pretty effective.
Well, thank you guys. We've ran out through the chat. We've had a ton of coaches on here and obviously you guys have spent way more time than we had initially hoped that you would. So I appreciate that so much. I know you guys are both extremely busy, so we all appreciate that. From all the coaches that got to listen, thank you guys very much. For everyone else that is listening, I'm actually going to cut this video up a little bit and put in the video that we messed up or that we had a glitch with. That'll be at the very beginning. And so you guys can watch a replay of this on YouTube without all of that, issues that we had at the beginning. So it will be, clean, and we'll have that up hopefully on YouTube by tomorrow. If you guys want to rewatch this, any of you guys coaches, or send it out to your other coaches. But again, thank you guys. Thank you, Cap, Mac. Thank you guys at the program for coming on and talking to us.
Thanks,
Coach Harper, thanks for giving us the opportunity to do so. We certainly enjoyed ourselves here this evening. We appreciate all the coaches and their questions. For all the coaches that are listening, for any of your viewers during this time, we call it during this opportunity, if coaches would like to receive, we produce, Mac and I write a fair number of them, but although our teammates do also write a fair number of them as well, but we write a monthly letter on leadership. If you go to our website, www.theprogram.org, you can sign up to receive our monthly letters on leadership at no charge during this opportunity. You will receive them because we have been writing them now for years. You will receive them every 2 weeks. I know they're monthly letters on leadership, but you will receive them every 2 weeks until you're caught up, and then every month thereafter. I definitely would recommend to all your viewers and listeners that I think they would really enjoy those letters on leadership. Again, you go to theprogram.org and they can sign up to receive them there.
Well, perfect. We receive them. We've signed up, so we really we enjoy it. We'll be getting the book soon, and then we look forward to going through that. So thank you guys again. Thanks for your time, and hopefully you guys have a good evening. And we will stay in touch with you guys, hopefully a bunch here in the near future.